I'm sure a lot of you have heard the old saying that cash is king, and it seems to make sense, and you understand it. It seems plausible, but it's an old saying for a reason, because frankly, it's out of date and it's out of touch with our modern reality. I know you've heard older generations, your parents, your grandparents, your parents and grandparents' generations say this for years, that cash is king and that's the thing that matters the most. And again, it sounds good in theory. I can't buy something unless I have the money for it, therefore cash is king, what have you. But again, it's an old way of thinking and it's out of touch with our modern and in particular future reality in this country. What happens is these older generations lived that reality for a portion of their life where cash was king. You ultimately had to have the chop, so to speak, in order to be able to get what you want. You saved up your money, you worked hard to be able to get what you want so that way you didn't put yourself into debt. But what it really is older generations that were able to more easily get credit in years past, trying to scare younger generations away from credit in large part because of the way older generations used and ultimately misused and abused credit and created debt and bankruptcies and problems for themselves. They are trying to steer you away from making the same mistakes that they did. And while it's understandable and somewhat admirable that you'd want to see those coming after you learn from your foundation, learn from the groundwork you laid, and ultimately learn from your past mistakes and not be doomed to ultimately repeat them, the simple fact of the matter is it's a lot easier for people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s to talk about the fact that cash is king when in a lot of ways, they can get by on cash based off of where they are in life because they've had more years to be able to accumulate what they want to accumulate. They've also had more years to be able to save up money. But the simple fact of the matter is, especially for younger generations, the modern reality is, especially in this country, is that credit is king, not cash. Let me give you an example here. Let's say you get ready to go buy a $20,000 car, a new car. It's got the basics and maybe one extra package thrown on it, let's say. A decent mid-sized four-door sedan. All right, you go in there with $4,000, $5,000 down. It's what your parents and grandparents' generations will tell you what you need in order to be able to get that car, get it into the payment range that is comfortable for your budget. If you come with 20% or more down, that's always going to get the job done. Well, the simple fact of the matter is that's not always true. You could sit there and come with 20, 25, 30% down, but if your credit is tore up from the floor up, you might not be able to get that car at all no matter how much chop you put down. And even if you are somehow able to get that car with the amount of chop, that money, that cash that you're putting down, you're still going to end up with a really crappy interest rate. All the while, they might try to scale you back in vehicle because they're looking at you at a higher risk as a lender of potentially defaulting, meaning they have to sit there and try and take that vehicle back from you, resell, and they're trying to mitigate their potential loss. And you end up with a vehicle that's less than what you wanted, and you end up still paying more than you had anticipated, and in a lot of cases, a lot more. Now imagine if you go with average credit, and you go with maybe 2 or 3 or even 4,000 down. You'll probably be able to get the vehicle, but you're still going to get a mediocre interest rate, and you're probably, again, going to get a higher payment than you envisioned. All the while, you've put down several $1,000s to still get to that payment that is $50, $75, $100 a month or more above what you were comfortable paying. How silly do you look? Your payment's higher than you wanted. You might have ended up with less car than you wanted, and you're having to pay more for it per month than you had envisioned. Yet imagine if you have great credit. You could walk into a dealership with no money down. Let's say your credit score is in the 700s. You could sit there and finance. You could sit there and lease. You're going to get a great interest rate, and you're probably going to get that payment at or below where you envision, because with that great credit, the car dealership knows basically that you can buy whatever's on the damn lot if the bank is going to be willing to buy into that much of a financing package, and as a result, you have more leverage. You have more power. So the person walking on the lot with poor credit and even $7,000 down is in a much less advantageous position than somebody with great credit that brings no cash to the table whatsoever. But yet we have older generations that will sit there and tell us that cash is king. And that, again, is just an old way of thinking. It's not in line with our modern reality. Think about if you try to go buy a house. If you say cash is king and you have terrible credit, It probably means you're going to end up having to save up for so many years to get that dang house. You're going to be saving to buy your house until you're in your 50s or your 60s. All the while, imagine if you had decent or really good credit or great credit, you could sit there and live in that house in your 20s or 30s, be building up equity in that house, and at some point in time be in a position where you could still end up owning the house before the person that would have had to save up, let's say, 150 or 200,000 in order to be able to buy that house outright. What would you rather have, all that cash, or would you rather have that credit? For those real-life situations, the credit is king, not cash. And again, I understand the old way of thinking, and I understand older generations trying to steer us away from credit because of how those previous generations misused, and abused it, and how many problems and bad situations they created for themselves. But what happens is those older generations are doing younger generations an incredible disservice by trying to stick them in the past and put them in a position that is disadvantageous based off of the modern reality. It doesn't matter how much cash you have to a certain degree. You could sit there and say, well, if you've got millions, you know what? In that point in time, yeah, but how many people are walking around with millions of dollars and multiple commas in their freaking bank accounts? I mean, seriously. And when you look at it, look at how many different ways credit can affect your day-to-day life. Imagine going to rent an apartment or a house and you've got tore up credit. You might have gone from having to put down first month's rent plus perhaps a full month's security deposit to having to put down an additional month or two because your credit is so bad. Yeah, cash is going to be king to a certain degree in that case because your credit was so tore up. You have to have that additional money to be able to give yourself a decent place to live. But if your credit was great, you maybe only had to put down the 1 month security deposit, or in some cases only half a month or no deposit at all. Again, we reference the example of going to own a house. You go in there to try and get financing on a house. Yeah, you might be on a $200,000 house, have $40,000 to put down. Imagine how many years that took you to save that up even to begin with. You still try to sit there and get a bank to finance you for a $160,000 mortgage. If your credit's tore up, good freaking luck to you. Whereas you could sit there and walk in with very little down and great credit, and you're going to be viewed as much less of a credit risk and therefore be able to get a better interest rate and a lower payment, even though you're bringing less money to the table than the guy that brought $40,000 or $50,000 to the table. Think about the example I just gave you with buying a car. I've clearly pointed out how credit is more important than cash in that situation. But look at the other ways that credit can affect you, especially bad credit, on a day-to-day basis. You go and move into a new place. You got to get your utilities set up, your electric, your gas, perhaps your water, sewer, trash, phone, cable, satellite. You know, if you go buy a cell phone, let's say. All of these things, most of these places are going to pull your credit to analyze your financial picture and analyze your potential risk and your risk to them to not paying your damn bill. And if your credit is bad, it's going to cost you more money because you have to sit there and put down additional deposits, what have you. Or let's say you try to get car insurance for that car you just bought or that car that you have. You know, those insurance companies will most certainly pull your credit because outside of your driving record, that's another good potential indicator from a financial risk standpoint of how likely you are to actually pay your bill on a month in, month out basis. So that poor credit could sit there and cost you for your insurance in terms of getting you a lower amount of coverage for a higher price, having to put more down up front, all of that. And you'll think about it this way too. If you have poor credit and let's say you don't have any credit cards at all to your name, which many people in this country do not, think about how hard it is to rent a car. Several car rental places won't rent you a car unless you have a credit card. Or if you do have let's say a debit card, they will sit there and hold several $100s of your actual money, not your credit line from a credit card, but your actual own money as a reserve, as an authorization. And all the while, what are they going to do if you bring a debit card to the table? Oh, hello, they're still going to pull your credit in a lot of cases. And if your credit is still bad, it doesn't matter if you have $150,000 in your freaking bank account attached to your debit card, they still might not rent the damn car to you. Same thing, imagine how hard it is to get a lot of hotels reserved without having a credit card in the fold because, again, you'll deal with similar issues with debit cards, and in some places, they will only take credit cards. So it can limit you in your ability to rent a car in a pinch or be able to stay in a hotel in a pinch. And furthermore, you know, it doesn't matter how much cash you have. You go to apply for a job, and that employer pulls your credit, and your credit's not good, and they have concerns about you. You might not get the job, or you might get a lesser job than you had originally applied for. And while you've heard people talk about it, and maybe you've never had happened to you, I assure you, it happens. Because it's happened to me before. It can happen. So all of these things, you could have all the cash in the world. But if you don't have that credit to back it up, it doesn't freaking matter. But you can sit there and have all that credit in the world and not a whole lot of cash, and it makes it much easier to get by in your life. The bottom line is previous generations have that fear built into them based off of their mistakes, and they don't want to see younger generations repeat those mistakes. So what ultimately happens is we get a lot of bad advice. And now we have younger generations that have no idea how to build credit, how to maintain and establish credit, how to be able to put themselves in a position to be able to get the car that they want, get the house that they want, be able to enjoy some of the finer things in life, because our previous generations tried to put us in a mindset of 50, 60 years ago. And it just doesn't match the modern reality. So that's part of the reason why I do this video, and that's part of the reason why I'm going to start doing videos dealing with credit and good credit and bad credit, how to establish, build, repair your credit. I'm going to be talking about all of this in the months to come on this channel. I may do one video about it per week. I may do 2 videos about it per week. I'm going to talk about how to get your credit reports, how to read and understand your credit reports, how to get your credit score, how to read and understand your credit score, the different factors that actually affect your credit score, what's important, what's not. I'm going to talk about how to get rid of negative items, how to get some positive items on your trade lines for your credit report. I'm going to do all of these different things, talk about the importance of having a variety in your credit profile, the different types of credit. I'm also, most importantly of all, going to help clear up some of the myths or misconceptions, inaccuracies, and half-truths that are out there when it comes to credit and credit reporting and credit scoring, because a lot of times in this age of information, we can get a lot of misinformation. And I assure you, I see it all the time, especially when it comes to credit and credit reporting and credit scoring and consumers' understanding in particular of how these different things work. There just flat is a lot of misinformation out there. So I look at this as an opportunity to help some of you, because the fact is a lot of people don't really know. They don't really understand. And maybe in a lot of ways don't understand why it's so important, and they don't really know where to go for help or who to ask. Well, I'm here to help. I'm here to teach you from the good things I've done over the years. I'm here to teach you the bad things I've done over the years. I'm here to teach you what you need to do to be able to improve the quality of your day-to-day life, because at the end of the day, like I said, unless you've got multiple commas in your bank account, credit's going to be a part of your life, and a very important part of your life. And for those of you that have no credit or bad credit, you know exactly what I'm talking about, how much it can hinder your day-to-day quality of life and how much more expensive it can be to not have that good or great credit. So I'm here to help out those of you that maybe have just turned 18, 19, you have no credit whatsoever. I can help you figure out what you need to do to start establishing some credit history, because in some ways, no credit history is worse than a bad credit history. For those of you that have mediocre credit or bad credit or tore up from the floor up credit, or you feel your credit's so bad it's got a negative score, I can help you too. I can teach you some tricks of the trade to be able to get those negative items off. I can teach you things to do, things not to do, what you need to do as you start to go about the process of rebuilding your credit, what type of things you need to have, what type of accounts you need to have, all of that. And even if you have good credit, but you still sometimes find yourself not getting the best possible interest rate, maybe some of the things that I teach you and talk about throughout this series of credit building and credit repair can help you as well improve your quality of life even more. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the modern reality is credit is king. So I hope as I do these videos, just like I've done this one talking about why credit is king and not cash, in part to get you away from that propaganda that's been fed to you for so many years by older generations, I hope legitimately that at the end of the day, I can help a lot of you out. Some of you might not think that I know what I'm talking about. Some of you might not want to listen, and that's fine. You take it with a grain of salt. You take it for what it's worth. But I promise you and I assure you, especially for those of you with no credit history, mediocre credit, bad credit, terrible credit, if you tune in and you watch my different videos on these topics, you'll be amazed over a period of time how much your credit and credit score will improve and how much it will improve ultimately the quality of your life. I'm here to help. I'm here to help in part because I know for many years I didn't get the help that I probably needed. And as a result, it's made my life a lot more difficult than it needed to be. So if I could sit there and help even a few of you, it'll make me feel pretty good at night, that's for sure.